Introduce yourself again.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Louise Webb. I am here at Maxwell Hall today talking about growing up on a farm in Bryantown, Maryland, which is a little historical town, and it's historical because John Wilkes Booth came through after assassinating Lincoln. We are I live right on the Sakaya swamp. And I grew up, I really want to tell you about growing up on a farm with grandma and grandpa and all they taught me. Many survival skills. Uh, I lost my mother. Let me start by saying uh, I was born on the farm 96 years ago, delivered by my grandmother. And what I think is so wonderful, I am back on part of that farm with my grandson, my son, my grandson, and my great grandchildren. I am teaching the grandchildren the many skills that my grandmother taught me. Um, Delivered by my grandmother with no doctor in sight, and I tell everybody that uh, no medicine. My grandmother made our medicine, and I thought that was wonderful too. I grew up uh, before coming living with grandma and grandpa. I grew up in a one-room school in Fort Washington Road, and the school had still been there. But anyway, I grew up in that one-room school, no heat, no water, and no electricity. But I survived, and I'm going to tell you just how I survived. I lost my mother when I was about 7 years old and had to come back to the big house where I was delivered and live with my grandma and grandpa. And my dad had to go off to work in order to provide for us. My grandmother she's had 14 children, 2 sets of twins, and she said she didn't see no way that she could keep us. So she went to a fine doctor in Bryantown, and she said, "Can you find a home for these children?" And he said, "No, keep those kids together, because once you put them in a foster home, they will probably never know each other." And that was truly a blessing. And he said, "Take them home and the Lord will provide." And I can truly say the Lord has provided for me, and I am very grateful for that. So we had to come to grandma's and to leave that one-room school and to come to grandma with a 10-room house and 200 acres to roam on. Can you imagine how happy I was? As I say, grandmother taught us a little bit of everything. And of course, grandpa grew all our food. Food was grown. The wheat, the corn, and he would take the corn to the mill and the wheat. So we had our own and flour and meal. Big barrels of flour and big barrels of meal. Because remember, my grandmother had all the children to feed. Not only did she take care of us, but a lot of times the kids would come and say, or the young adults would come, I say teenagers, and say, I'm living with Mr. So-and-so and I don't want to stay there anymore. She said, "Well, honey, come and live with us," because we had plenty of room and plenty of wood to heat the fires. And at one time, we had 5 stoves going, but there were the tin stoves and only the old wood cooking stove that sat in the kitchen with a water tank on the back. And of course, with the wood stove going all day, we also had hot water all day, so that was good. But the other water was bought from the pump in the yard. And thank goodness we didn't have to walk to a long spring to bring that water back. We got it right from the pump, placed it in a wooden bucket on the table, and can you imagine, we all drank from that one long-handled dipper. Um, and so getting back to the food, Father used to do a lot of hunting. He taught me how to skin the rabbit. He taught me how to skin the squirrel, and also how to make a nice gravy or pot pie, believe it or not. But and speaking of that, my father used to hunt and get the hides from the. I don't think he had the hides from the. He had the hides from the. Didn't have it from the coon, or yeah, he might have had it from the coon, but he had it from the other animals down in the hutch, and they were mink down there too, believe it or not, all kinds of animals down in the Sakaya swamp. Fish. My father had my father made a cage like, and he called it a cage for anyway to put the fish in. And whenever we wanted, it was made out of wire, and whenever we wanted fresh fish, we could go down and get fresh fish. So that was good. And getting back to everything, we had an orchard, and pears, apples, and plenty of grapes. And we could can, my grandmother would can the grapes, and vegetables, we would can those. We had, and I remember my grandfather had given me a cow of my own, and in the evening around 5, I would have to go and find my cow. And of course, the cow had a bell on, so you would stand and listen, and when you heard the bell, you'd go get the cow, bring the cow in, milk the cow, come to the house, and of course you had to strain the milk. After you milk your cow, you strain the milk, and of course, to sometimes it's maybe some little bit of trash in the milk. So you strain the milk, brought it to the house, put it in a crock, and took it in the cellar, not the basement, we called it the cellar. And it stayed there overnight in a couple of days, and then cream would form on the top. And from that cream, you would make your butter. And how fascinating it is to put some cream, and of course, we did not have a butter churner, so we used a jar. And we had a lot of fun because we would shake that jar and we would say, "Come butter, come butter, come." And so, we had that butter to make our good pound cakes. We had plenty of chicken, so we had the eggs to put in it. And we had walnut trees, so we could have black walnut ice cream, whatever we wanted. So we were really living the good life. But at that time, we thought, oh my Lord, I got to do this and got to do that. But it really was a wonderful experience growing up on the farm and learning to do everything. When it got time to kill the hogs, that was wonderful. A lot of work, but wonderful. Because we had our own hams, we had the shoulder, we had the bacon, the pork chops, and making the sausage was fun. We had to start a fire in the morning. I didn't, but my grandfather, and you had to have the hot water in the barrels in order to scald the hog to get the hair off. And they would do that, and by 11 o'clock, my grandfather, they would kill about 8 hogs, and they would have them hanging up on the pole. And by 11 o'clock, we were eating fresh liver right from the hog with mashed potatoes and gravy. Potatoes grew on the farm there. And making the sausage was fun. We used our own sage from the garden to season the sausage, and whatever else it needed, pepper, salt, red pepper. And we would, in a little frying pan on the back of the stove, we would put a sample there. And of course, if it wasn't right, we had to add a little more whatever to go in it. Um, and at Christmas time, uh, our cousins would come to the country, and they called us their country cousins, and we called them our city cousins. But they got the best of the deal, because when they came to the country, grandmother would load them up, and in return, they bought us a bag of oranges, grapefruit, raisins, and nuts. And of course, that didn't grow on the farm, so that was really lovely for us. And I think that's what my grandmother would use for us at Christmas time. Put uh, orange in the stocking and some nuts in the stocking. Uh, and we would give them a turkey, ham they would get, maybe sausage, and lots of fruits and vegetables. Getting and I'd like to chop wood, and I can chop it today. And chop the wood and the blocks. We chop the wood and bring it and stack it on the front porch for the winter. So we always were preparing for the future, whatever it would come up. And I can recall we were all sick, and my grandmother went out in the forest and got roots from the ground, roots, the sassafras root, and also cherry bark. And she made that cough medicine for us, and she would call it at that time the whooping cough. And boy, she would give us a tablespoon of that, and we would cough. We'd really get the mucus out of our throat. Yep. I'm trying to think what else did she make in the medicine line. But anyway, I'm going to jump to our toys. We had to make our own whatever it was to play with. So we used rags, a lot of rags, and we rolled them tight, and tied them with a string, and that was our ball. For our horse, we used a tobacco stick, and for our car, we rolled a tire. Took a tire and we just rolled that tire. So that was fun. And like I said, I grew up on a farm, but I didn't like the big farm horses to ride. I just didn't. I was afraid to ride a big horse, afraid that I would fall and the horse would step on me. So that's one of the things. And I would like to go off in the Sunday evenings when my brothers had their little boys to play with them. Sometimes I would walk to the spring, and being very inquisitive about what's under that rock, and to look at the rock. And of course I was at the spring, and the water was coming right out of the ground, very, very clear water coming out of the ground. And I would look under the rock, and there I'd see the crayfish. And of course my father had already taught me what a crayfish would look like. And I tell you something else, that my father would catch a lot of turtles, and he would go to down off of 301 to a place called Allen Fresh, which is still there today, and catch the turtles and bring them up in a grass sack to La Plata. And I imagine he sold them for 50 cents a piece, and that would have been a lot of money, but that's what he would do. And people really love the turtle. And of course, people are still having turtles today, and they're also still having today wild animal dinners and things, where the people kill the ducks, rabbits, squirrels, pigeons, and not pigeons. There's another bird I can't. Quail. And the quail is real small, but they are delicious. So they still have the wild dinners here in the county. And let's see what else that I could tell you that was exciting. Playing in the haystack. Now that was exciting. The men would come and thrash out the wheat and the rye. And of course, the stack of wheat was real, not wheat, the straw, real high. And we would love to play in that. Also, they had straw in the stable for the horses. And there was a place called the loft, and we would go up there, the stairway up there, and we would jump down in that straw, which was probably dangerous, but that's what we would do. And let's see, what else did I making? I'm making the toys, and something else. We would go in the forest and look up in the trees, and there we would see honey. And we would, the boys would just keep throwing sticks up until they knocked that honeycomb down. And we used that for our, we would chew that wax. That was our chewing gum. We'd chew that wax. And, but we didn't know nothing about making candles then, but now they make a wax candle. But that was something to get that and chew it. And we said that was our chewing gum. And something else we would make. Oh, and no toothbrushes. Can you imagine? But we would go out and get a piece of cedar, because there's always cedars and pine, but you get a little piece of cedar and brush your teeth. And you use the baking soda. And you also use pieces of cedar, because there's oil in cedar. And got your hot iron right off the wood stove, because Grandma had a lot of ironing to do. And we take the cedar and rub that iron, put that iron on that cedar, the best aroma, and wax. And then she would iron her clothes. That iron would just glide over those clothes. And another thing that Grandmother did was you had to walk to one of the farmers' houses and get their clothes. A lot of that was done. That's what ladies made their change. And my grandmother would send us, before we went to school, my brother and I, to get a clothes basket. We'd have a clothes basket of clothes. And of course, she'd wash them on Monday. And we would take them back. And my grandmother even ironed the men's socks that was in the basket. And so after she done that a while, and then she would, not only did she wash for one family, she washed for other families too. And that was her spinning change. And her, she would keep her money tied up in a handkerchief in her bosom. Yeah, and she made wine. And of course, she had the young teenagers around there. And I'll never forget, she wondered how did they get into the trunk, because she had the trunk a lot. But they were wise enough to take the hinges off the back. My grandma said, I know I had that trunk locked. And we made, she made all kinds of wine. But she made the potato wine, which was good. And I think she used, I think she used the potato peel. But I know she made the grape wine, the potato wine, the dandelion wine, because we would have to pick those dandelion. Never had the dandelion greens to eat, but we picked the dandelion. And in the early spring, we would go out in the woods and get this, we called it a pork salad. And it was bitter, but once you had to boil it a couple times, pour the first and second water off, you couldn't tell it from spinach. And something else we would do. Now what I do, I got that recipe, the old squash, zucchini squash, you can make, take the peel off it and soak it in lemon. But anyway, you can fool it on people and they think it's a pineapple. So that's good too. And of course, grandmother just made everything. And the beef, we killed the beef. I don't think grandfather would kill it every year, but I know he killed the beef. And my grandmother got the tender meat from in the head of the beef and made mincemeat. She made mincemeat pie, and it was good because she chopped the onions and the raisins and all up in there. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that experience of growing up on the farm.
What about the